So the Indiana Fever signed yet another hardship waiver because ChloBibby is out for the season. And Stephanie White spoke, and apparently Fever officials are planning to huddle up as to whether or not Caitlin Clark will play at all for the rest of the season. So I actually started out this video to talk about the signing of Bree Hall and to go over some of her highlights and to talk about ChloBibby being out. But first, I do want to start out with the injury update for Caitlin Clark, as it seems to be looking like she is not going to be coming back for the rest of the season. Now, don't quote me because who am I to say whether she is or isn't? The answer is, of course, ambiguous as always. And when Stephanie White was asked about it during practice today, this is what she said.
You mentioned Chloe not having enough time. Does Caitlin now have enough time?
Yeah, we really wanted to use this West Coast trip to evaluate. We're going to sit down, after practice today and hopefully, have a direction soon.
Do you anticipate you guys would decide and maybe even say something publicly between now and Tuesday, just given the
Yeah, I think that's the hope. We knew that we had a stretch over the weekend to really see where we are, and the hope is to sit down and have an answer one way or another. Yeah.
What's the furthest she's gone to this point?
What do you mean the furthest she's gone?
How much has she been able to get accomplished?
She hasn't been able to do a whole lot of contact. So she's been able to get up and down 5-on-0, been able to get shooting, but hasn't been able to get a whole lot of contact.
So I know there was a lot of basketballs bouncing around, but basically she was asked if they were finally going to announce publicly what they were planning on doing with Caitlin. And Steph White says that is the hope. And just from listening to the tone in her voice, I'm not going to say that it looks like she's going to come back out there. It also looks like she hasn't been able to do any contact practice. So this might be a season that we see without the likes of Caitlin Clark. I am telling you, the only consistency in the Indiana Fever is the inconsistency. It is the consistent injuries happening because ChloBibby, although her knee injury was supposed to not be a setback, is out for the rest of the season. She was taken off the injury report and she did travel with the team to the West Coast, but according to Steph White, all the traveling kind of flared up her knee, but apparently at the time was not a setback. And today, she has been ruled out for the season. So welcome back, Bree Hall. Now, Bree Hall is somebody that the Indiana Fever actually drafted in the second round of the draft. She did play in one preseason game against Brazil, and then the Indiana Fever waived her. But now the Indiana Fever are bringing in hardship contracts to replace the hardship contracts that they originally signed for the original players that went out on the roster. This has been an injury-stricken season for the Fever. And ChloBibby is now the fourth player for the Indiana Fever to go out with season-ending injuries, although she is the fifth player to be out, as Caitlin Clark has not been ruled out for the season. But again, who knows? We will probably find out later today. But Scott Agness did say that they are planning to huddle up and talk about it. He posted on Twitter officially that the Fever officials plan to huddle up and discuss next steps for Caitlin Clark. This last week on the road was significant for them and her to see what Clark could do. And to this point, limited contact. Just some 5-on-0 full court. Now, this has a lot of people feeling strung along. A lot of people feel hoodwinked for pretty much the entire season. One person commented, "Strung fans on long enough. Huddle up," meaning figure out how to word the PR statement shutting her down for the season. And somebody else, whose handle is What the Hallie, said, what does this even mean? She's either ready for full practice or she isn't. Why are they still waiting to literally the last minute to make this decision? They had all this week. It's literally Thursday. But back to Bree Hall. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it because bringing in a rookie is not the most dominant player you can bring in, especially in a playoff push. That's pretty much why they haven't been playing KK that much. And while yes, some of the rookies this season have dominated, like Sonia Citron, like Janelle Salon, we have to think about the fact that they've actually had a full season to acclimate and kind of get used to a lot of what has been going on in the W. Now, Bree Hall was playing with the Golden State Valkyries. They did not keep her, and they did waive her after her hardship contract ended. And Bree Hall was not a first-round pick like Sonia Citron was, and Bree Hall did not have overseas experience like Janelle Salon did. But it is possible that Bree Hall can spot up and shoot a three. And she was known for some pretty good defense over at South Carolina. So let's just take a look at her highlights. Here's a good example of her paint moves. So she's on the perimeter, kind of assesses the situation, spin, floats, scores. Here you might recognize Aaliyah Boston actually, and Aaliyah Boston is bullying through a couple of defenders, passes it over to Bree from the perimeter. Once again, Aaliyah Boston passes it over to Bree, who spot up, sinks it. So here's another example of where she pushes through the paint and her teammate sets a nice screen for her, and she makes a pretty difficult shot. Right here, goes around, kind of shows nice handles, escaping that defender. Now, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it because a lot of her spot up threes are when she is wide open, but there's one right here where it looks like she might be popping off a screen and she's defended pretty well. Pretty quick release, swish. But it does look like she loves to spot up at that wing, very much like Bibby. And she doesn't have a very slow release. Now, I'm not saying it's the quickest release, but it's not that slow. It's not like, you know, Nalissa Smith slow. And here we have an example of her running in transition. Kind of had to bend backwards for that one. So again, you know, there's some pretty good stuff in there, but she is playing against college athletes. And what I noticed is a lot of those spot up threes had a lot of space to shoot them. She had time to set her feet. She doesn't exactly have a slow release. She doesn't exactly have the quickest release, but she looks like she could be solid. I really don't know. I don't have 100% faith in Bree Hall as like a difference maker for the Indiana Fever. The difference maker for the Indiana Fever would be Caitlin Clark. If Caitlin Clark did come back, there is still Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, and Kelsey Mitchell. And those four combined can be pretty lethal on the court, especially if you get Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark into a rhythm. And the pick and roll between Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark is pretty deadly. Now, I don't think that they're going to go super far in the playoffs. I have to be completely honest, because Caitlin Clark does need a few games to acclimate to an entirely new team. I think Bree Hall would make the 17th signing for the Indiana Fever. It actually might be the 18th signing, but they do have 4 players on a hardship waiver, and Chloe Peterson noted that they will be eligible for at least 3 for the rest of the season, including playoffs, and 4 until a potential return for Caitlin Clark. Which means when Caitlin Clark comes back, they will have to waive 1 person. And that totally depends on how Bree Hall does. If Bree Hall kills it, then I would assume that they would be waiving Shea Petty. If Bree Hall kind of gets lost on the court, I'm assuming that they will waive Bree Hall. But the Fever are in playoff contention, and they do play the Sky tomorrow. And if you aren't aware already, Angel Reese got her 8th tech in a game last night, so she is not eligible to be playing against the Indiana Fever, which is kind of a good thing for the Indiana Fever because of her rebounding and because she does put up a lot of points in a game. So for that reason, the Sky are all the more handicapped, and the Indiana Fever have a better chance of beating them than they did before. And if they beat the Mystics, which it looks like the Mystics are kind of on a bit of a downward trajectory for the season, I don't know that they're really trying that hard because they don't really have to. They are eliminated from the playoffs, and they are a young team, and usually young teams towards the end of the season kind of like peter out a little bit, except the Valkyries. But it does look like the Fever will most likely make the playoffs, and this is Bree Hall's second chance to show that she does deserve a spot in the WNBA.